Imagine a winter so silent you can hear the heartbeat of the earth freezing solid beneath your feet. In the year 1347, the world didn't just get cold, nations turned to iron. But inside a small mud-walled hut in medieval England, the family is not shivering. They are mastering the darkness. Tonight, we are not just observers of history, we are entering its most intimate sanctuary. While the modern world battles the night with humming heaters and artificial light, the medieval peasant fought with secrets of insulation and the shared breath of the living. This isn't a story of suffering, but of a forgotten tactical coziness. As the great frost of the 14th century settles over the fens, your journey into the deep, restorative quiet of the past begins now. Let the air in your room settle. Take a long, deliberate breath, and as you exhale, feel the boundaries of the 21st century begin to dissolve. The glowing screens, the distant hum of traffic, and the frantic pace of digital life are receding, replaced by the vast, indigo stillness of a medieval night. You are safe, you are protected by the weight of time itself. Imagine the ceiling of your home lifting away, revealing a sky crowded with stars that haven't been seen by modernized stars that burn brighter. In a world without electricity, the floor beneath you is no longer hardwood or carpet, but the ancient, frost-bitten soil of a land that has seen 1,000 winters before this one. In our time, the wind is a ghost we silence with double-pane glass and the flick of a thermostat. But in the mid-14th century, the wind was a primal neighbor. It howled across the open marshes, whistling through the skeletal fingers of great oaks, and carrying the sharp, metallic scent of frozen iron. Yet as harsh as that wind sounds, notice how it only serves to deepen your own sense of sanctuary. Feel the sudden, heavy presence of your blankets right now. Notice how they press down on you with a comforting, gravity-bound weight. In 1347, this feeling of nesting was a survival skill. You are cocooned in an island of heat, an internal fortress prepared to drift backward through the centuries into a world where every ember was a miracle. We often paint the medieval peasant as a tragic figure, a victim of a brutal era. But this is a historical illusion. The truth is far more captivating. These people were tactical architects of heat. They were masters of the microclimate, understanding the language of fire, the insulating power of the earth, and the hidden warmth found in the huddle of the biological world. They didn't just endure the winter. They engineered a life within its very heart. Every choice, from the thickness of a wall to the rhythm of a breath, was a calculated move in a slow-motion dance with the elements. They knew secrets of deep, marrow-warming comfort that the modern world has traded for convenience. They found peace in the pulse of the heart. As you lie here, let your muscles mimic the profound stillness of those winter fields. Your hands are heavy, your jaw is loose, your thoughts are beginning to move at the pace of a falling snowflake slow, drifting and utterly silent. There is no urgency here, no deadlines follow you into the 14th century. There is only the steady, rhythmic pulse of history. You are invited to be a silent ghost in the rafters, watching as a family from 700 years ago prepares for a night of sacred rest. Their world was smaller, quieter, and centered entirely around the flickering, golden heart of a single fire. It is a world of soft shadows and rough textures, where the struggle for life created an intimacy we can scarcely imagine today. Let the modern night fade until it is nothing more than a faint memory. The distant vibration of the world becomes the low moan of the North Sea wind. The air around you is growing thick with the scent of dried lavender, seasoned oak, and woodsmoke. You are prepared. You are grounded. The journey into the heart of the great frost is about to become physical. Let us move closer to the source of this ancient survival. Let us step together into the shadows, through the low, thick doorway of a home built from the very land it rests upon. Let us step inside the walls of the wattle and dog. Close your eyes and breathe in. The air here, within the threshold of this modest home, has changed. Gone is the sharp, biting ozone of the frozen sky. In its place is something heavy ancient and strangely comforting. It is the scent of damp earth, the golden sweetness of drying straw, and the faint musky perfume of woodsmoke that has seeped into every fiber of the structure. This is the smell of survival. It is a scent that grounds you, pulling your consciousness down from the swirling clouds and anchoring it to the very floor beneath. You are no longer drifting. You are arriving. The world outside is a frantic, frozen memory. But here, within the mud and the straw, there is only the deep, resonant quiet of the earth. Step closer to the wall in your mind. Reach out a hand, not a hand of flesh and bone, but a hand of pure thought, and press it against the surface. It is not cold like stone, nor is it hollow like modern drywall. It is dense. It is solid. This is the magic of wattle and dog. Beneath the surface lies a skeletal framework of woven hazel and willow branches the water. These flexible wood saplings were interlaced like a giant sturdy basket, creating a flexible spine that could bend with the shifting earth and the heavy winds without ever breaking. It is a structure of resilience, a marriage of wood and intent that has stood for decades against the turning of the season. Feel the strength of those hidden branches, tucked away like a secret ribcage beneath the skin of the house. Over this wooden skeleton, the daub was applied layer by layer, hand by hand, with a patient, rhythmic devotion. Imagine the soft, wet sound of mud being slapped and smoothed against the weave. This wasn't just common garden soil. It was a precise scientific mixture of subsoil, clay and long golden stalks of straw. The straw acted like rebar in modern concrete, providing tensile strength and preventing the clay from cracking as it dried in the summer sun. As you run your phantom fingers over the wall, you can feel the slight undulations of the hand-smoothed mud. It is textured and organic, the skin of earth that breathes with the inhabitant. Each ripple in the wall is a fingerprint of a person who once stood exactly where you are, carving a sanctuary out of the wilderness. But there is a secret ingredient in these walls, a hidden glue that the modern world often looks upon with a raised eyebrow. Yet it was the very key to medieval comfort. To make the daub truly waterproof and airtight, the builders added animal dung, usually from the very cattle that now huddle in the corner. Before you recoil, feel the peace of this realization. The dung contained undigested fibers and natural enzymes that, when dried, created a chemical bond more durable than plain mud. It turned the walls into a solid insulated mass, a biological armor that trapped the internal heat of the fire and refused to let it escape into the night. It was the ultimate recycling the waste of the field, becoming the shield of the family. It is a material that is at once humble and sophisticated, a testament to a time when nothing was wasted and everything had a purpose. Listen now to the sound of the world outside. The wind is still there, a low, frustrated moan as it searches for a crack, a seam, or a weakness in your fortress. But the walls are thick, vastly thicker than anything you live within today, a silent barrier of earth and history. Hear the soft, rhythmic thrum of the gusts hitting the exterior. It is like the sound of a distant drum, muffled and harmless, a reminder that the storm cannot reach you here. Inside, the air is perfectly still. The candle flame in the corner doesn't even flicker. It stands like a golden needle in the darkness. You are held in a vacuum of silence, protected by the very ground you stand upon. The thickness of the wall is the thickness of your safety. There is a profound luxury in this simplicity in your modern world. Walls are thin, often hiding wires and pipes and the restless hum of hidden machines. But here, the wall is honest. It is made of the forest, the field, and the clay. It doesn't hum. It broods. It absorbs the warmth of the central hearth during the day and slowly, generously releases it back into the room during the long, dark hours of the night. It is a slow-motion battery of heat, pulsing with a warmth that feels like a physical embrace. Imagine leaning your back against that wall now. Feel the radiant heat of the earth soaking through your clothes and into your skin. It is a steady, unwavering heat, as old as the sun and as reliable as the turning tide. As you lean back into the soft shadows of this room, feel your spine aligned with the sturdy timber posts that hold up the heavy theft. Your shoulders drop, your chest expands with slow, steady rhythm. The walls are holding the world at bay for you. They are a promise kept between the builder and the inhabitant. You can let go of the need to be vigilant, for the earth itself is standing guard. You are nestled in the heart of a hill that has been reshaped into a home. A place where the boundaries between the natural world and the human spirit have blurred into a single, quiet existence. The darkness here isn't empty. It is full of the quiet strength of the dog, the woven wisdom of the wattle, and the ancient peace of a structure that knows exactly how to survive 1,000-year frost. Let your mind drift across the surface of the clay, tracing the straw fibers that weave in and out of sight. They are like golden threads in the dark, holding the world together. The house is a living thing, expanding slightly in the warmth and settling in the cold, dying with the same rhythm that you are breathing now. There is no metal here, no plastic, no artificiality. Only the elements, refined by human hands into a sanctuary of stillness. You are sinking deeper into the straw, your body becoming as heavy and relaxed as the mud walls themselves. You are becoming a part of the house, a part of the history, a part of the silence that has lasted for centuries. Rest your head. Let the image of these thick earthen barriers be the last thing you see before the world fades further into the mists of time. Feel the security of being wrapped in the planet's own skin, a layer of protection that no winter can pierce. Everything is muffled, everything is slow. The frantic energy of the outside world is gone, replaced by a deep, resonant hum of safety. You are within the earth now, and the earth is kind. It provides the wood for the fire, the clay for the walls, and the peace for your mind. But as you find your final peace within these walls, you realize that the cold has one more path it likes to travel. It is a subtle, creeping chill that doesn't come through the window or the door, but waits for the unsuspecting below. For while the walls are thick and the roof is tight, the cold doesn't just come from the walls. It rises from below. Imagine, for a moment, that you are standing barefoot upon the very foundation of this home. In the modern world, floors are hard, clinical surfaces tiled, wood or synthetic fibers designed to repel the world outside. But here, in the winter of 1347, the floor is not merely a surface, it is the living skin of the earth itself. As you first step onto it, you might expect a jarring, icy shock, but the reality is far more nuanced. The earth beneath you has been compacted by the weight of generations, beaten down into a surface as dense and smooth as polished stone, yet it retains a primal subterranean coolness. It is a solid, grounding presence that anchors your weight, reminding you that you are standing upon the bones of the world. However, the medieval family did not leave this dirt bare to the elements. They understood that the true secret to warmth lay in the layering of life. Imagine the family gathering together as the first frost touches the windowless openings of the house. They bring in armfuls of fresh, golden straw, thick, hollow stalks that have spent the summer drinking in the sun. This straw is the first layer of your medieval carpet, a golden sea spread across the dark earth. It traps pockets of air within its hollow chambers, creating a natural barrier of insulation that prevents the deep, creeping chill of the ground from reaching your skin. It is the beginning of your nest, a soft, rustling bed that turns the hard earth into a sanctuary of comfort. Feel the friction of the straw against your ankles, a dry and gentle rasp that promises protection. But the layering does not stop there. To this golden base, they add the rush's long, flexible green stems, harvested from the nearby riverbank. These rushes are woven and spread with a rhythmic, intentional care. They add a springiness to the floor, a natural cushion that gives slightly under every step. And hidden among the straw and the rushes are the strewing herbs. Imagine the scent of dried lavender, mint, and meadowsweet being crushed underfoot. As you walk across this living floor, the friction of your movement releases tiny, microscopic bursts of fragrance. The air is suddenly filled with the ghost of a summer garden clean, herbal sweetness that cuts through the heavy scent of woodsmoke and damp clay. It is a sensory shield, a way of bringing the fragrance of life into the dark, dormant months of winter. Now, let us look closer down into the golden depths of this floor. This was the great reveal of the medieval home. The floor was not a static object, but a thriving, living ecosystem that insulated the soul as much as the body. Below the top layer of fresh straw lay older layers, which had begun to ferment slightly. In the science of survival, this fermentation process actually generated a subtle, low-grade heat of its own, a gentle, thermal pulse that rose up through the layers to meet the inhabitants. It was a floor that was literally alive, a complex bed of organic matter that acted as a massive, room-sized heat sink. Every crumb of bread, every drop of spilled ale, and every fragment of herb was reclaimed by this floor, contributing to a rich, insulating mulch that kept the house breathing. It was a cycle of return, where the earth took what was dropped and gave back a quiet, steady warmth. Listen to the sound of this floor as you settle your weight into it. There is a specific, rhythmic crunch, the sound of dry, hollow straw collapsing and sighing under the pressure of a heavy body. It is a deeply soothing sound, a sonic vibration that tells your brain it is time to rest. Unlike the sharp click of heels on a modern floor, this sound is muffled, soft, and ancient. It is the sound of a bird settling into its nest, or a fox curling into its burrow. As you lie down now, imagine that the straw is rising up around you, cradling your limbs and filling in the gaps between your body and the earth. You are being held by the landscape, tucked into a golden furrow that smells of sunlight and dried rain. The floor is a promise of stability, no matter how high the winter winds howl, no matter how much the timber frame of the house groans under the weight of the snow. The floor remains unshakable. It is the one constant in a world of shifting seasons. You can feel the tension draining out of your ankles, your calves, and your thighs as they surrender to the soft, rustling embrace. You are sinking into the golden layers, your body becoming as heavy and still as the compacted clay beneath. The world of the 14th century is closing in around you. But it is not a claustrophobic closing. It is a protective one. It is the feeling of being perfectly placed, perfectly insulated, and perfectly at peace. In this moment, your modern bed is a distant memory. You are floating on a sea of meadowsweet and wheat stalk. The herbs under your head release a final, drowsy scent of lavender, slowing your pulse and smoothing the lines of worry from your forehead. The floor is absorbing your weariness, pulling it down into the dark earth where it can be recycled into the spring. You are part of the room now, a single thread in the woven watchtower, a single stalk in the matted dough. The stillness is absolute, save for the soft, repetitive rustle of your own breath against the straw. The darkness of the house is total, yet it is not empty. The thick walls hold the silence, and the living floor holds the heat. You are wrapped in a world of organic textures, wood, mud, and straw that feel more real and more honest than anything you have ever known. Let yourself sink. Let the straw support every curve of your spine. You are falling through layers of history, down into the quiet, dark and warm heart of the world. But as your eyes begin to drift shut, a new sensation enters the room. It is not a sound, but a visual pulse, a rhythmic, swaying movement of light that catches the edges of the rafters. From the center of the dark, earthen floor, presence begins to assert itself, drawing your gaze toward the very soul of the household. For there, at the center of this world, a single orange globe begins to dance. At the exact center of this darkened hall, where the four corners of the world seem to meet in a silent, ancient geometry, lies the heartbeat of the home. It is not a modern furnace hidden behind cold metal panels, nor is it the clinical, sterile glow of a radiator. It is a living, breathing presence, the central heart, as you lie deep within the golden, rustling straw of the living floor. Your gaze is drawn naturally, inevitably, toward this flickering core. Watch the embers. They do not merely burn. They pulse with a slow, deliberate cadence. There is a deep, rhythmic throb to the light, shifting from a fierce, sun-bright orange to a bruised, settling violet, then back to a warm, glowing amber. It is an ancient television, a hypnotic dance of heat that has captivated human eyes for 100,000 years. Every flicker is a silent story. Every sharp snap of a drying oak twig is a punctuation mark in the long, quiet poem of the winter night. You are watching the very essence of survival, a golden flower blooming in a desert of ice. In the modern world, we are accustomed to fire being a contained thing, a servant channeled upward through brick chimneys and cast out into the indifferent sky. But here, in the heart of the 14th century, the hearth is open, communal, and free. There is no chimney to whisk the spirit of the fire away. Instead, the smoke rises in a slow, wandering spiral, climbing toward the high, vaulted darkness of the thatched ceiling. As it reaches the heavy timber rafters, it begins to pool and spread, creating what the inhabitants call the blue haze. Imagine looking upward from your bed of straw and seeing a soft, ethereal lake of smoke suspended just beneath the roof. It is a translucent veil, a ghostly ceiling that softens the sharp angles of the soot-stained beam, turning the upper reaches of the house into a realm of shifting shadows and quiet spirit. This haze is not a burden. It is a heavy blanket of atmosphere, a secondary layer of internal insulation that keeps the sharpest teeth of the frost from biting through the thick reeds of the roof. There is a quiet, hidden science to this smoky air, a truth that reveals the hearth as a guardian rather than a nuisance. In our time, we are taught to fear the smoke, but for the medieval family huddling against the great frost, the smoke was a profound and necessary friend. This was the great reveal of the smoky hearth, as that thick blue haze permeated the dense layers of the thatched roof. It acted as a natural, perpetual fumigant. It was the smoke that hunted down the invisible pests, the wood-boring beetles that threatened the structure, the biting fleas, and the mites that would otherwise thrive in the warmth of the straw. The smoke was a silent, fragrant antiseptic, preserving the very wood that held the house aloft and ensuring that the family's sleep remained deep and undisturbed by the small, unseen irritants of the natural world. To breathe in the faint, oaky scent of the hearth was to know, with every slow breath, that your sanctuary was being purified, hour by hour, in the softest, most organic way possible. Focus now on the slow liquid drift of that smoke. Imagine it as a physical substance, as light as a fleeting thought and as fluid as mountain water. Watch it rise from the glowing heart of the logs, ghostly ribbons of silver and pearl, that intertwine and braid themselves as they ascend into the gloom. They do not rush. There is no draught, no sudden wind inside these thick, mud-hardened walls to disturb their journey. The smoke moves with a majestic, heavy grace, lingering around the bundles of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the rosemary, and the thyme infusing them with the preservative essence of the fire. As the smoke finally touches the underside of the thatch, it doesn't simply vanish. It seeps through the millions of tiny gaps in the reeds, filtered by the hand-woven roof, until only a faint, ghostly wisp escapes into the freezing, star-stuck night air outside. Inside, you are left with a warmth that is not just felt on the surface of your skin, but is inhaled deep into the soul, a smoky incense of safety. The sound of the hearth is the only music you require tonight. It is a symphony of small, incredibly comforting noises that anchor you to the present moment. Listen for the low, guttural roar of a fresh log finally catching the flame. Hear the delicate, glass-like tinkling of cooling embers as they settle into the white ash. Feel the soft, rhythmic sigh of the heat as it expands outward, pushing the shadows back toward the corners of the room. It is a sound that occupies the sacred space between total silence and human speech, a natural white noise that smooths over the jagged edges of your consciousness. You are sinking deeper into the straw now, your eyelids becoming impossibly heavy with the hypnotic, pulsing rhythm of the glowing coal. The orange light plays across the rough mud walls, turning the uneven clay into a shifting canvas of amber, bronze, and gold. You are no longer just a person watching a fire. You are being absorbed by its slow, radiant energy, becoming a part of the hearth's long memory. This is the ultimate immersion into the past, in the center of a world that has turned to iron and ice, You have discovered the sun. The hearth is a promise made in the morning and kept through the night, a promise that life continues, that the cycle of warmth remains unbroken, even in the harshest season. The heat doesn't just radiate, it flows like a tide, moving in invisible, golden waves that wrap around your tired limbs and settle like a warm weight in your chest. Your breathing begins to synchronize perfectly with the slow pulse of the embers, deep, steady, and effortless. You are becoming as still as the shadows dancing on the wall, as patient as the drying timber in the roof. The world outside the wattle and daub the freezing marshes, the howling wind, the crystalline frost is a distant, fading myth. Here in this circle of light, there is only the glow, the haze, and the profound, smoky peace of a 14th century sanctuary. As you drift further toward the velvet edge of sleep, the fire begins to settle into its final, most potent form. The bright, energetic dancing flames retreat, leaving behind a glowing landscape of deep canyons and shimmering mountain ranges made of red-hot charcoal. The heat becomes more concentrated, more focused, a deep-seated warmth that radiates from the very marrow of the ancient wood. The blue haze of the ceiling thickens into a protective mist, a silent sentinel guarding your dream. The room is quiet, the cattle in the darkened corner have ceased their lowing, and the living floor beneath you is a cradle of warmth. But the fire's work is never truly finished, even when the visible light begins to fade into the soft dark. The most enduring heat, the heat that carries a family through to the dawn, is the heat that remains hidden, tucked away where the winter wind can never find it. Even as the fire dims and the flames whisper their last, the secret lies in the ash. The house has grown quiet now, the air thick with the settling scent of heavy oak smoke and the profound, blue silence that hangs within the rafters. But as the winter night reaches its deepest, most silent point, the medieval family does not simply let the fire go out to be reclaimed by the frost. To let a fire die completely in the bitter winter of 1347 was more than a mere mistake. It was a profound loss of the home's very soul, a breaking of the thin line between survival and the void. Instead, they perform a nightly ritual that has been almost entirely lost to our modern world of plastic light switches and silent thermostats, the ancient meditative art of fire banking. As you lie securely in your nest of golden straw, watch the matriarch of the house move toward the glowing hearth. Her movements are slow, deliberate, and practiced, a rhythmic dance of shadows passed down through 100 generations of mothers and daughters. She is not extinguishing the flame, she is putting it to sleep, tucking the light into a bed of its own. The process begins with what the forest dwellers call the seed. Using a heavy iron peel or a sturdy wooden stave, she carefully gathers the glowing, red-hot coals into a tight, concentrated pile at the very center of the hearth. These are the living embers, the concentrated essence of the day's labor and the sun's trapped energy. Watch as she draws the fine silver-white ash from the outer edges of the pit, slowly and methodically mounding it over the glowing coal. This ash is a miraculous substance, a natural mineral insulation that acts as a profound thermal blanket. It smothers the active, hungry flame that preserves the intense, internal heat of the coals in a state of suspended animation. This is the secret of the banked fire. By cutting off the oxygen while trapping the searing temperature, the family creates a slow-motion combustion that can last for 10, 12, or even 20 hours. It is the art of making time stand still. There is a deep, ritualistic peace in this quiet act of burial. In our modern life, we are used to things being either on or off, active or dead. But the medieval mind understood the enduring power of the in-between. The banked fire is a state of pure potential, a hidden sun waiting patiently beneath a protective shroud of gray silk. As the last of the ash is smoothed over the mound, the room grows noticeably darker, yet your internal sense of security increases. You are watching the ultimate act of ancestral faith, fearing the one thing that keeps the killing frost at bay, trusting entirely that the seed will still be breathing when the sun eventually rises over the frozen fen. This was the great reveal of the winter night. For a medieval family, losing a fire was often a silent death sentence in the great frost. Yet they performed this burial with perfectly calm, steady, and fearless hand. They didn't fear the dark, because they knew exactly how to cultivate the light within it. Listen now to the changing texture of the ruined silence. It is no longer the same silence you heard an hour ago. Before, there was the active, crackling energy of the flames, a busy, bright, and demanding sound. Now, as the fire is banked, the silence becomes muffled, heavy, and resonant. It is a thick, velvet quiet that seems to press gently against your ears like the weight of a heavy woolen cloak. The only sound left in the world is the occasional, distant tink of a coal settling deep beneath its thick ash blanket, a sound so small, so delicate that it only serves to highlight the profound, immovable stillness of the house. This is the muffled heart of the medieval home. The heat is no longer radiant, sharp, and aggressive. It has become subterranean and steady. It seeps out from the ash mound in slow, invisible ripples, warming the clay floor and the surrounding straw in a way that feels like the steady, rhythmic pulse of a sleeping giant. As you witness this ancient preservation, let your own internal energy begin to bank itself. Imagine your thoughts, your worries, and your lingering memories of the day as those glowing coals, being gently covered by a soft silver layer of calm, cooling ash. You don't need to burn brightly right now. You don't need to illuminate the room or solve the problems of the world. Like the fire, you are simply preserving your essence, holding your warmth in a quiet, protected stasis. You are safe beneath the layers of history, tucked away from the biting wind that even now is scratching the thick thatch, frustrated and cold. The house is a fortress of ash and earth, and you are its most precious, protected inhabitant. The ritual of the hearth is a final signal to your body that the work of the day is truly and finally over. There is nothing left to do but exist in this warm, silver-gray peace. The contentment that settles over the room is a physical weight. It is the feeling of a promise kept between the earth and the people who tend it. The family knows with absolute certainty that in the morning they will not have to struggle with flint and steel in the freezing blue dawn. They will simply peel back the soft gray ash, reveal the glowing red heart of the sea, and feed it a few delicate shavings of birch bark to bring the entire world back to life. This continuity is the ultimate comfort, the knowledge that tomorrow's warmth is already here, sleeping right beside you in the dark. You can feel your own breath slowing, deepening, matching the nearly imperceptible respiration of the banked fire. Every exhale is a surrender to the straw. Every inhale is a taste of the oak-scented stillness. The shadows on the mud walls have stopped their frantic, flickering dancing. They have become long, still, and soft-edged, like the shadows of deep water. The blue haze at the ceiling has settled into a stationary mist, a silent guardian of the rafters. Everything in the 14th century leaning toward the earth, toward the floor, toward the deep restorative depth of the winter soil. You are sinking, not into a void of nothingness, but into a well-tended, ancient sanctuary of heat. The warmth of the fire banking is a slow, steady reassurance that you are never truly alone in the cold. But as the hearth settles into its long, silent vigil, you realize that the family has one final, living secret of the coldest hours, a way to double the warmth of the room without adding a single log to the fire. Warmth, however, is better shared than given. Now, as the fire settles into its long, ash-covered sleep, the family begins a ritual of human geometry that has remained unchanged for thousands of years. In our modern world, we pride ourselves on our solitary boxes, our private room, our individual mattresses, and the silent, sterile, and cold spaces we maintain between ourselves and others. We guard our personal space as if it were a fortress. But in the winter of 1347, distance was a luxury that no one could afford, and separation was a coldness that no soul could endure. To be alone was to be cold. To be separate was to be vulnerable. As the blue haze of the hearth slowly descends from the rafters, the family gathers on the living floor, not as separate individuals, but as a single, breathing, and integrated organism. This was the human lasagna, a layering of life, fabric, and shared heat, designed to defy the great frost. Imagine the communal dade, vast, soft expanse of fresh, sun-dried straw, topped with heavy hand-woven woolen blankets, and the rough, thick, and insulating hides of deer and sheep. There are no cold bed frames here, no hollow metal springs that creak in the night. There is only the earth, the straw, and the collective intent of the family. As they lie down, they do not simply scatter across the floor. They slot together with the precision of a puzzle, seeking the maximum surface area of contact. The elders, the grandparents whose blood runs thinner with age, and whose aching bones feel the damp of the fens most acutely, are placed at the very center of the pile. They are the sacred core of the nest, protected on all sides by the younger, more vibrant and radiant heat of the parents and the children. Feel the physical weight of this arrangement as you lie in your own bed now. In your mind, imagine the sensation of being tucked into a space where there is no cold edge, no forgotten corner of the mattress, and no draft that can ever find its way to your skin. To your left is the steady, rhythmic warmth of a brother. To your right, the soft, deep, and comforting breathing of a parent. This is a sea of wool and breath. The blankets are not just fabric. They are a communal heavyweight shield, held down against the earth by the collective gravity of the family. The air between you is not empty. It is a shared reservoir of life-giving heat. A microclimate of pure survival that the winter wind, for all its howling and scratching outside the thick wattle and daub, can never hope to penetrate. You are sinking into a warmth that is generated by the very people you love most. There was a subtle, unspoken, and beautiful hierarchy to these sleeping positions, a form of tactical coziness that prioritized the most vulnerable members of the clan. The smallest children were often tucked into the soft crook of a parent's arm, or placed securely between two older siblings, creating a pocket of absolute, unwavering insulation. In the 14th century, this was the most reliable, most sophisticated technology they owned. Body heat. It was a fuel that never ran out, a fire that didn't need to be banked with ash, and a medicine that cured the shivering of the soul. As you lie here in your own time, let the phantom warmth of this ancient memory settle over your limbs. Feel your own blankets grow heavier, as if the history of this communal safety is pressing down on you with a gentle, loving hand, anchoring you to the bed and making it impossible and entirely unnecessary to you. The sound of the room has shifted once again, entering a new phase of the night. The sharp tink of the cooling hearth has faded into the background, and in its place is the most soothing, most primal sound in the long history of our species, the sound of collective, rhythmic breathing. But it is a slow, oceanic tide of deep inhales and long, effortless exhales, perfectly synchronized by the absolute stillness of the room. It is a low, vibrational hum that resonates through the layers of straw and into the clay floor, vibrating in your very bones. Listen to it. It is the sound of a pack that has survived the day and has no fear of the night. There is no snoring of modern stress here, no tossing and turning of an anxious mind only. The deep, restorative lung work of people whose lives are tied to the slow turning of the season. This sound is a lullaby without words, a low frequency that tells your nervous system that you are not alone, that the pack is safe, and that the long winter vigil is being shared by many hearts. There is a strange quiet and deeply relatable humor in this closeness, a domestic peace that transcends time. You might feel the slight sleepy shift of a shoulder as someone settles deeper, or the way a heavy woolen cloak is tugged an inch closer in the dark. It is a world of soft, natural textures and muffled, slow-motion movement. The rough, earthy scent of the lanolin in the sheepskins, blends with the fading lavender of the floor and the ghostly oak charcoal of the cooling air. It is a dense, rich atmosphere that feels thick with life and continuity. In this human lasagna, there is no room for the cold to breathe. The heat is trapped, recycled, and amplified until the center of the pile is as warm and inviting as a summer afternoon in the high hayfield. As you drift within this imagined nest, let the boundaries of your own body begin to soften. You are not a solitary point in a cold and indifferent universe. You are a vital part of a long, unbroken chain of human warmth. The medieval family understood that survival is not an individual struggle, but a communal art. They didn't just share their food and their work, they shared their very shadows, their very pulse, and their very breath. This is the ultimate nesting process, a total blissful surrender to the presence of others. Your jaw is loose, your eyes are closed tight against the dark, and your heart rate has slowed to match the ancient, steady, and unwavering pulse of the room. You are floating on a raft of straw and wool, drifting through the frozen 14th century in a cocoon of absolute human-made heat. The great frost may turn the rivers to solid glass outside, and it may shatter the very stones in the fields with its icy, relentless grip, but inside these mud walls, the living lasagna remains soft, pliable, and warm. It is a fortress built of flesh and fabric, a monument to the power of the huddle. You can feel the last lingering bits of tension leaving your spine, flowing out of you and into the deep layers of straw below. You are becoming a part of the house's stillness. You are sinking through the blankets, through the centuries, down into the deep, dark, and silent heart of the winter. But even as you settle into this profound human embrace, you notice that the lasagna has one more layer, a layer that doesn't wear wool, but carries a heat so vast and so steady that it anchors the entire house to the earth. For among the humans, the heavy, slow-motion breath of giants begins to rise. In the deepest, darkest, and coldest part of the medieval night, when the central fire has been banked beneath its silver shroud, and the human lasagna has settled into its rhythm, collective breathing, a new layer of profound warmth begins to pulse through the house. It is a slow, heavy, and incredibly steady heat that does not come from the glowing hearth or the thick woolen blankets. It is the heat of the giants in the far, darkened corner of the hall, separated from the sleeping family only by a low, weathered timber partition. A massive, shadowed form shifts slowly in the deep straw. There is a low, vibratory groan, the sound of an ox settling its 1,000-pound weight into the yielding earth. It is a sound that would be jarring, perhaps even frightening, in our modern, sanitized, and separated world. But here, in the winter of 1347, it is the ultimate rustic lullaby of the countryside. It is the sound of life holding its ground against the frost. To the modern mind, the idea of sharing a living space with large cattle seems like a hardship, a strange sign of medieval poverty or desperation. But in the long, brutal winter of the Great Frost, it was a stroke of absolute biological genius. This was the surprising hidden reality of the medieval longhouse. The animals were not just livestock to be kept at a distance. They were 0-pound biological heaters. Each cow, each heavy-shouldered ox, and each huddling sheep was a living furnace of constant metabolic energy. Their massive, powerful bodies constantly and quietly churning through the dry hay they had consumed during the short, gray daylight hours generated a steady, unwavering, radiant heat that filled the low-ceilinged room. While a wood fire can flicker, dim, and eventually die, the internal fire of a living creature is a constant, faithful time. The cattle were the thermal anchors of the home, ensuring that the temperature inside the thick mud walls never dropped to the killing, crystalline depths of the world outside. Breathe in slowly now, letting the air of the 14th century fill your lungs. The atmosphere in this corner of the house is thick, earthy, and strangely sweet. It carries the scent of dried summer clover, the heavy musk of bovine breath, and the warm, clean smell of large, healthy animals at rest. In our modern time, We have been conditioned to fear the raw smells of the farm. But to the medieval peasant, the smell of the cow was the sacred smell of safety and survival. It meant that the living capital of the family was still breathing, still beating. It meant that the great plow ox was strong enough to endure another night of iron ice. It meant that there would be life-giving milk in the spring and muscle for the heavy fields in the coming summer. To smell the cattle in the dark was to know that survival was winning its quiet war. It was a grounding, ancient perfume that told the human nervous system, the providers are here, they are warm, and we are not alone. Listen closely to the soundscape of the animal corner. It is a slow, repetitive, and deeply hypnotic rhythm that demands nothing from you but your attention. There is the steady, wet, and methodical crunch-crunch of a cow, peacefully chewing its cud, process of digestion that is as rhythmic and calming as the slow ticking of a grandfather clock. There is the occasional, heavy, and resonant sigh of an ox, a sound that seems to rise from the very depths of the earth itself. And then there is the heat. If you were to walk toward that timber partition in the total dark, you would feel the air grow progressively thicker, heavier, and warmer with every step, as if you were approaching a large fur-covered radiator. The heat of the cattle doesn't rise and vanish like the woodsmoke. It stays low and loyal, hugging the floor, creeping into the straw where the humans lie, and wrapping itself around the cold edges of the heavy woolen blanket. There is an incredible, ancient peace in this interspecies harmony. You are part of a closed, perfect loop of energy and protection. The family provides the cattle with a fortress against the wolves and the biting wind. And in return, the cattle provided the family with the very breath of life and warmth. As you lie in your own nest of straw, imagine the presence of these gentle, massive giants just a few short feet away. Their large dark eyes are closed in contentment. Their massive hearts are beating in a slow, powerful cadence. And their breath is rising in soft white plumes of steam that merge with the blue haze of the rafters above. They are the silent, immovable guardians of the night, their sheer physical mass acting as a living barrier against the frozen void of the exterior world. Feel your own body reacting to this imagined heavy presence. Your pulse begins to slow, matching the rhythmic, grinding movement of the ox's cud. Your limbs grow increasingly heavy, mimicking the immovable and settled weight of the beast in the corner. You are no longer a solitary, fragile individual struggling against a vast and cold universe. You are a small but vital part of a massive, multi-species huddle. The boundaries between human and animal, between the house and the frozen field, have blurred into a single, warm, and undeniable reality. The house is a sturdy vessel of light, drifting through a dark sea of ice, and every living creature on board is contributing its own small, internal fire to the collective flame of the household. The darkness here is no longer a place of fear, uncertainty, or empty. It is a place of incredible density, rich texture, and biological power. The low, distant lowing of the ox is not a cry of distress, but a simple, profound statement of existence in the face of the great froth. I'm here. I'm warm. We are alive. Let that thought settle deep into your marrow, warming you from the inside out. The winter can howl outside until its throat is raw and bleeding, but it cannot pierce the combined heat of the fire, the straw, the wool, and the gentle giant. You are sinking now, deeper than you have ever been, into a state of total, earthy, and rustic contentment. The entire world is reduced to the scent, dry hay, and the slow, heavy, and reliable breath of the ox. The night is finally reaching its zenith, that breathless moment where the cold is at its most predatory and the world outside is frozen in a grip of iron. But inside the sanctuary of the longhouse, the layers of defense are absolutely complete. The thick walls of mud, the floor of living, insulating straw, the banked and hidden heart of the fire, the lasagna of human life, and the radiant, massive heat of the cattle have created a fortress that is impenetrable to the froth. You are perfectly insulated, perfectly hidden, and perfectly still. The journey into the 14th century has brought you to the very center of what it means to be safe. But as your mind finally prepares to let go of the last, fraying threads of wakefulness, you realize that the ultimate heat is not something you find in the room, but something that your own life begins to generate from within. Beneath the heavy blankets, the body prepares its own shield. The room has reached a state of absolute, crystalline silence. A silence so deep it feels as though the very air has turned to glass. Outside, the great frost of 1347 has turned every molecule of moisture in the sky into falling needles of ice, and the world of the fens is held in a breathless, frozen grip. Even here, within the sanctuary of the thick mud walls and the radiant, heavy heat of the cattle, the air that brushes against your exposed cheek has a sharp metallic edge. If you were to reach out a single hand from beneath the heavy, comforting pile of wool and sheepskin, you would feel a fine, microscopic dusting of frost along the very edge of the top blanket, a delicate lace of white ice, formed by the sudden freezing of your own exhaled breath. It is a quiet reminder that the winter is always searching, always waiting for the smallest gap in your defense. But as a seasoned survivor of the 14th century, you have one final, powerful, internal shield to deploy. You are not a victim of the cold. You are the deliberate architect of your own internal climate. In the modern world, we are used to breathing quickly and shallowly, our lungs constantly reacting to the frantic, fragmented pace of digital life. But here, in the deep and velvety dark of the medieval night, you must learn survival breath. It is a slow, rhythmic, and intentional practice, a precursor to the ancient techniques of pranayama, born here not of spirituality, but of primal necessity. To keep the lungs warm and the heart steady in a world of ice, the medieval peasant learned to breathe almost exclusively through the nose, drawing the freezing air through the narrow, warming passages of the face before it ever touched the delicate, vulnerable tissues of the chest. Imagine yourself lying there now, perfectly still in the straw. Follow the leader of the family huddling in a slow pulse beside you. Draw a slow, steady, and quiet breath in through your nose. Feel the air enter, cool and sharp, and notice how it miraculously warms as it travels through the bridge of your nose and down into your throat. Hold it for just a soft heartbeat at the top, letting your internal fire embrace it, and then release it even more slowly than it entered. As you exhale, imagine that warmth spreading like a golden liquid from your solar plexus out to your cold fingertips and toes. You are recycling your own life force, turning each breath into a golden thread of insulation. In this state of survival breath, your heart rate drops to a steady, primeval throb, and the boundaries between your physical body and the warm, rustling straw begin to blur and fade. There was a specific, ingenious trick to this nocturnal survival way to create a private, humid microclimate for the face. Before drifting into the deepest, most restorative sleep, the medieval inhabitant would draw a thin, porous veil of hand-spun wool over their nose and mouth. To a modern observer, it might look like a mask of hardship, but in reality it was a biological filter of incredible efficiency. As you breathe out into the soft wool, the moisture and heat of your breath are trapped within the tiny air pockets of the fibers. Then as you breathe in, the freezing air of the room is pulled through that warm, damp wool, preheating it and humidifying it before it ever reaches your throat. You are breathing your own warmth back in, a closed-loop system of thermal preservation. It is a soft, humid sanctuary for the senses, a way of staying warm without ever needing to move a muscle or stoke the fire. Let your own breathing settle into this ancient medieval rhythm now. Follow the slow oceanic rise and fall of the human lasagna around you. In through the nose, a long, quiet, and peaceful pause, and out through the nose, with every long exhale, feel the last remnants of tension leaving your jaw. Your tongue is heavy and relaxed in your mouth. Your eyes are resting deep and still in their socket. You are mimicking the shallow, efficient, and masterful breathing of the sleeping family, a technique that preserves the body's precious core temperature, while allowing the mind to descend into the furthest, most silent reaches of the subconscious. The air trapped beneath your woolen veil is sweet, warm, and perfectly still. It is the only air that matters now. There is a profound biological peace in this simple realization. You are not fighting the winter, you are smarting it from within. By slowing your breath to this primal pace, you are signaling to every cell in your body that you are safe, that the hunt is over, and that the night belongs entirely to you. The frost on the blanket edge is a distant reality, a world away from the humid, golden atmosphere you have created beneath your personal shield of wool. You are sinking, drifting on the slow tide of your own respiration, becoming as quiet as the ancient stone and as steady as the frozen earth. The rhythmic sighing of the house, the occasional creak of the timber, the soft rustle of the straw, and the collective, low breath of the family has become a single, unified frequency of rest. It is a vibration of pure, unadulterated contentment. You are tucked away in the most private chamber of history, protected by layers of mud, fire, cattle, and your own life force. The cold may be a howling giant outside, but here you are the master of the small, warm spaces. You are ready to let go of the world entirely, to slip past the veil of the present and into the deep, restorative waters of the medieval dream. But even as the breath carries you toward the brink of total sleep, you feel a lingering heavy comfort in your core, a warmth that began long before you lay down, for to fuel this internal fire through the long, dark hour. The stomach must be full, and the soul must be fed. As the survival breath settles into its long, rhythmic tide, your consciousness drifts away from the frozen world outside, and toward the very center of your being, to the deep, internal warmth that serves as the silent foundation for all other layers of your comfort. In the modern world, we often view a meal as a quick, functional fuel stop, a light affair to be forgotten as soon as the plate is cleared and the screen is turned on. But in the winter of 1347, a meal is a strategic deployment of vital energy. It was the friendly brick that would sit in belly for 10 long hours, slowly and generously radiating heat, like a small, private sun, trapped in the deep core of the body. Imagine, in the dim and flickering amber light of the dying embers, the sound of a heavy wooden spoon scraping the bottom of a thick, hand-forged iron pottage pot. It is a hollow, resonant, and deeply satisfying sound. The sound of the last bits of the day's strength being gathered into a single, precious bowl. This was not a light broth or a delicate, fleeting soup. This was a dense, heavy, and formidable pottage, designed by centuries of peasant wisdom to be the ultimate cold weather anchor for the human soul. Imagine the rich textures within that smooth wooden bowl. There are the root vegetables, the pale parsnips, the sturdy leeks, and the winter onions that have been simmered for hours over the slow peat fire until they have practically dissolved into a thick, sweet, and earthy cream. There are the slow grains, the hulled barley, and the cracked rye that remain firm and nutty, requiring the jaw to move slowly and the stomach to work with a patient, steady, and focused persistence. And most importantly, there is the lard, the precious, golden animal fat that coats the back of the spoon and clings with a warm, savory weight to the roof of the mouth. In the heart of the great frost, that was not a luxury to be avoided, it was a sacred shield. It provided the high-density calories that the body would burn like slow-growing oak logs throughout the frozen midnight hours. Feel the imaginary weight of that meal in your stomach right now. It is a pleasant, heavy, and undeniable fullness that pulls your entire center of gravity down into the soft, rustling straw. This is the great, comforting reveal of the medieval winter diet. The family did not just eat to satisfy a fleeting hunger. They ate for thermogenesis. They understood, through generations of survival, that digestion was, in itself, a powerful internal heater. As the stomach begins the long, laborious, and rhythmic process of breaking down the dense grains and the rich, golden fats generates a significant amount of internal metabolic To the medieval mind, a full belly was a hot brick placed in the very center of the human sign. It ensured that the blood pumping through the heart was preheated by the fire of the stomach before it ever reached the cold extremities of the body. The pottage was the living fuel for the internal heart, a slow burn energy source that would keep the toes from freezing, even when the fire in the central pit had turned to silent, gray ash. Focus on that specific sensation of satiety, the feeling of being full to the very brim. It is a heavy, drowsy, and absolute contentment that begins in the solar plexus and slowly, inevitably, begins to migrate outward like a rising tide of gold. Imagine the warmth from that thick, savory stew beginning to seep into your chest, softening the tight muscles of your shoulders and your neck. Then it travels slowly down your arms, making your hands feel thick, still, and impossibly heavy in the dark. It moves down through your hips, into your heavy thighs, and finally, after a long journey, it reaches the very tips of your feet. This is the internal tide, a slower radiation of life energy that tells your brain that the body has everything it needs to survive until the blue dawn. You are no longer a hollow vessel vulnerable to the biting wind. You are a solid, warm, and fortified structure of flesh and bone. The imagery of this meal is one of earthy, rustic, and unshakable peace. There is no sharp, waking spice here to startle the senses, only the mellow, grounding and ancient flavors of the dark earth. You taste the salt of the preserved bacon, the deep sweetness of the caramelized winter onion, and the rich, bread-like scent of the long-cooked barley. It is a flavor profile that encourages the mind to settle and the eyes to close tight. As you lie there in the huddle, you can almost feel the brick of the pottage doing its silent, heavy, and vital work within you. Your body is a biological furnace, and the fuel you have taken in is rich, dense, and long-lasting. The outside world may be starving in the white silence of the cold, but within the mud walls of the longhouse, the belly is full, the blood is warm, and the soul is entirely satiated. There is a profound, almost forgotten luxury in a specific type of heaviness. It is the heaviness of a smooth stone resting at the bottom of a clear, still, and deep pond. You are sinking through the many layers of the day, weighted down by the golden fat and the ancient, sun-drenched grain. The sound of the wind outside the thick patch becomes even more distant, as if it belongs to another life or another century entirely. You are cocooned in your own metabolic glow, private, internal summer happening beneath the skin of your chest. The straw beneath you seems to rise up to meet this new weight, cradling your fortified body with a rustling, golden, and maternal embrace. You are anchored to the earth, and the earth is kind. The friendly brick is your final, internal guarantee of safety. It is the heavy anchor that prevents you from drifting into the cold, restless anxieties of the night. Your breathing is now so slow and so shallow that it barely disturbs the thin woolen veil over your face. Your heart is beating with the deep, muffled, and steady thrum of a drum heard from a great distance. You are full, you are heavy, you are warm, the internal fire is stoked. The external fire is banked, and the world of 1311 is finally, mercifully, fading into the silver mists of the deep, restorative, and ancient sleep. But as the warmth of your digestion finally reaches the very tips of your toes, you realize the family has left one last physical gift for the feet that have walked the frozen mud of the fields all day. La bin chien don shet eloyansi kuyi kung ku enesitin, the hot stone ritual. Logaila MSC katituk dogong vatrokwan trong enyecheti trong sitste jem fong kis inchte a indria sheele. As the night reaches its deepest, most crystalline hour, and the friendly brick of the pottage begins its long, quiet, and metabolic burn within your core, there is one final physical act of care to be performed before the world fades away. This is the hot stone ritual, a piece of primitive and brilliant technology so effective and so deeply intimate that it mirrors the highest, most expensive luxuries of our modern age. In the 11th hour of the medieval day, long before the fire was banked and the family settled into the soft human lasagna of the living, a specific and careful choice was made. From the edge of the central hearth, the matriarch or the father would select her flat river stone, a heavy smooth piece of granite or dark basalt, worn into a gentle oval by centuries of cold, running water. This stone is not merely a rock, it is a thermal battery, a silent vessel designed by the earth to hold the sun's golden memory long after the external world has turned to iron and ice. Imagine that stone now, heavy and ancient in the palm of a hand. It has spent the last hour resting near the glowing, pulsing heart of the fire, not directly in the scorching flame, but close enough to absorb the intense, invisible infrared energy of the oak ember. It has been turned and tended with the same rhythmic care one might give to a precious loaf of bread. As it is finally pulled away from the heat, the stone is almost too hot to touch, radiating a fierce, dry, and penetrating warmth that seems to vibrate in the very air around it. But it is never left bare to the skin to prevent it from scorching the flesh or the dry, precious straw. It is wrapped with intentional slowness in several layers of old, softened linen, or a thick fragment of a worn-out woolen cloth. This wrapping is essential. It creates a soft, porous buffer, allowing the intense heat to seep out slowly, measuredly, and gently over the long course of the entire winter night. This was the true, noble ancestor of every electric blanket, every heated mattress pad, and every copper hot water bottle you have ever owned in your modern life. It was a simple, elegant, and timeless solution to the ancient problem of cold extremity. As you lie perfectly still in your nest of straw, imagine that linen-wrapped stone being slid gently, carefully beneath the heavy pile of blankets. Feel the reassuring weight of it as it settles at the very foot of the bed, exactly where your toes are searching for comfort in the dark. The very moment your feet touch that warm, textured linen, a profound signal of absolute safety is sent directly to your brain. In the medieval world, there was a fundamental truth. If the feet were warm, the heart was calm. The heat from the stone is not like the shifting, ambient heat of the room. It is a concentrated grounding and ancient warmth that pulls the last stubborn bit of tension out of your tired ankles and your heavy calves. Focus your mind entirely now on that singular sensation at the foot of your bed. Imagine the dry, steady heat from the riverstone radiating upward, traveling through the soles of your feet, and deep into the very marrow of your bone. It is a deep heat that feels as though it is reaching back through the centuries to touch you. The stone which once sat at the bottom of a sun-drenched summer stream is now giving that stored sunlight back to you in the freezing heart of a 14th century winter night. Your toes, which may have been numb and weary from the frozen mud of the fields, begin to tingle, soften, and surrender. The arches of your feet relax against the smooth, linen-wrapped weight. This is a focused, intentional comfort, a final, physical gift, from the hearth that anchors you to the present moment of absolute rest. There is a profound meditative peace in this final layer of protection. You are now fully encased in a fortress of multidimensional warmth. Below you is the living, insulating floor of straw. Above you is the vast sea of wool and communal breath. Within you is the slow-burning energy of the pottage. And at your feet, the ancient river stone holds the line against the creeping froth. The world of 1347 has provided everything you need to survive, to thrive, and to sleep. The stone will remain warm until the first thin, gray light of the dawn, a silent, glowing companion through the long hours of the midwinter darkness. As you feel that heat pulsing steadily against your feet, the rest of your body becomes impossibly light, as if you are floating on a raft of golden energy, drifting away from the shores of the waking world. The rhythmic, heavy sighing of the cattle in the corner, the muffled, synchronized breathing of the family, and the slow, invisible cooling of the banked fire, all merge into a single, distant, and comforting hum. You are sinking now, past the layer of history, past the heavy layer of survival, and down into the deep, dark, and silent well of a dreamless, restorative sleep. The heavy river stone is your final anchor, keeping you tethered to the warmth of the home while your spirit begins to wander through the silent fens and the snow-covered, moonlit forests of the distant past. You are perfectly insulated, you are perfectly cared for, you are perfectly safe. The night is a vast, cold, and indifferent ocean, but you are a warm, glowing island, unreachable, serene and still. The village outside the thick mud walls is silent now. The paths are buried deep in drifts of white, and the stars above are like chips of ice scattered across a black velvet sky. No one moves in the frozen lanes, and the winter wind has finally tired itself out, leaving the world in a state of crystalline, breathless stasis. The house is a closed world, a sacred, unbreakable circle of life that the great frost cannot touch. You are falling now deeper and deeper into the soft velvet embrace of the winter night. You are safe. You are home. The journey into the dark is complete, and the long vigil is over. The village outside is silent, but the watchers remain. Lugaila, Lidangiava, Hinuchen Cho, NNC 11. The village watch. NSC Naido Long Vaitro, Nadir Jin, Kong Jiantia, Shang Ar Ravelang, POC Yak Antam, Pon Enite, San Vichi Ka Tuf Kachbol. As you drift within the soft, linen-wrapped and radiating warmth of your hearthstone, the boundaries of your own quiet room begin to expand, reaching out through the thick, insulating mud walls and into the deep frozen night of the entire village. In our modern age, we often imagine the medieval night as a terrifying, empty, void place of absolute chilling isolation and predatory, encroaching shadows. But for the inhabitant of the winter of 1347, the night was not an empty space, it was a profound, communal vigil. Beyond your own heavy, reed-thick thatch, across the ice-crusted lanes of the sleeping hamlet, dozens of other friendly bricks of pottage are burning in dozens of other warm bellies. The village is not merely a collection of separate, lonely houses. It is a single breathing and collective organism, held together by the unspoken sacred trust of the midnight watch. You are a part of a larger life, a cell in a body that refuses to let the cold win. Imagine, for a long, peaceful moment, the view from the high, moonlit ridge overlooking the valley. In the crystalline, motionless air of the great frost, the wood smoke does not blow away. It rises in perfectly straight, silver-gray pillars from every single rooftop, standing like ghostly, benevolent sentinels against the black velvet of the star-choked sky. To see that smoke rising from your neighbor's roof in the middle of the dark hours was the ultimate, silent sign of peace and continuity. It meant that their hearth was banked, their cattle were safe in their straw, and their life force was entirely intact. If a chimney or a humble smoke hole ever went cold, the village knew. There was an invisible, vibrating thread of awareness stretched between every doorway, a social radar of the soul that functioned even in the deepest, most unconscious levels of sleep. You are not a solitary, flickering spark in the vast dark. You are a vital part of a magnificent, glowing constellation of human warmth. This was the unspoken guard of the medieval community, a layer of protection that required no walls and no iron. In the winter, the village operated on a complex system of mutual survival that perfectly mirrors the very human lasagna you are resting in now. If a widow's fire failed in the night, or an elder's woodpile ran dangerously low, there was the ancient, quiet ritual of the coal share. Imagine a neighbor moving slowly through the blue, ethereal moonlight, carefully carrying a ceramic pot filled with glowing red embers to ignite a cold, darkened heart. This was the true heartbeat of the village, passed gently from hand to hand, house to house, As you lie in your straw, let the profound, heavy security of this thought settle over your heart. You are never truly alone in the winter, even in the total silence. There are eyes that watch the silver smoke, ears that listen for the distant distress of cattle, and hearts that beat in perfect rhythmic synchronization with your own. There is a deep biological relaxation that comes from knowing that the pack is indoors, are barred against the frost. In the 14th century, trust was not an abstract social concept. It was a physical, tangible one. You can feel the last, lingering tension draining from the back of your neck and your jaw as you realize that the heavy burden of survival is not yours to carry alone. A village is a fortress made of shared lives, and every inhabitant is a strong stone in its invisible wall. The watchers are not just the men standing on the literal gate, but the collective, hovering consciousness of every family huddling against the cold. This is the ultimate ancient protection, the knowledge that if the frost were to bite too deep, or the darkness grew too heavy, a neighbor would be there with a glowing coal, a heavy wool blanket, or a shared life-giving breath. Listen now to the absolute, majestic stillness of the village. It is not the hollow silence of the grave, but the thick, rich silence of a well-tended nursery. Occasionally, you might hear the distant, muffled bark of a village dog across the fields, or the low, resonant, and comforting chime of a stone church bell marking the slow, holy passage of the night. These sounds do not wake you. They reassure you. They are the pings of a healthy, living community, confirming that the world is still there, that the order of things is preserved, and that the rising morning is a shared golden promise. You are sinking deeper now, your mind expanding beyond the mud walls to include the entire valley in its sense of home. The cold outside is merely a beautiful backdrop for the incredible dense power of human connection. This social history is the hidden heater of the long-lost path. We often look back and see only the hardship and the shadow, but we forget the immense gravity-defying peace of the communal bond. You are resting in a cradle of trust that has been woven over centuries by hands that knew the same cold you feel tonight. The village is a living entity, and tonight it is asleep, dreaming a collective, vast dream of the green spring to come. Your breath is now a quiet part of the village's breath. Your warmth is a part of the valley's warmth. The frost can scratch and howl at the door, but it can never break the spirit of the huddle. You are wrapped in a layer of society that is thicker than any stone wall and warmer than any fire. The imagery of the silver smoke pillars remains in your mind's eye, a silent forest of heat rising toward the eternal stars. You are perfectly anchored, perfectly shielded, and perfectly trusted by those you have never even spoken to. The weight of the world has been lifted from your tired shoulders and distributed among the hundreds of souls who live within the comforting sound of the parish bell. You are a single, peaceful cell in a magnificent, hibernating body. Every exhale you release into the woolen veil is a small, vital contribution to the peace of the night. You are drifting, floating on the collective security of the 14th century, moving further and further away from the sharp, jagged edges of the modern self and into the soft, communal, and ancient dark. The great frost of 1347 has done its absolute worst, but it has failed to extinguish the light. It has only succeeded in driving the people closer together and making the hearths burn with a more precious flame, and the communal trust grow deeper than the ice. You are a part of this victory. You are a part of this warmth. The night is your sanctuary, and the village is your shield. You are falling into the deepest, darkest well of sleep now, carried by the invisible, ghostly hands of your neighbors, ancient pulse of the winter earth. But even as you surrender completely to the void, you remember the village is a place of many lives. And even in this humble, earthly peace, there are those who sleep in gold. As the communal, rhythmic breath of the village fades into a distant and ghostly hum, the raw, earthy smell of damp straw and lingering wood smoke begins to dissolve into the mist, replaced by something sharper, colder, and infinitely more refined. We are leaving the humble, mud-walled sanctuary of the peasant's huddle, drifting upward and across the frozen, moon-bleached landscape of Kent. The heavy, grounding weight of the human lasagna thins out and vanishes, and suddenly you are no longer resting upon the dark earth. You are suspended, you are in the very heart of Hever Castle, and the air here does not smell of cattle or cottage. It smells of ancient, damp stone, expensive beeswax, and the faint, lingering ghost of dried rose petals from a forgotten summer. This is a different kind of winter. This is the cold of the high-born silence that is elegant, melancholic, and terrifyingly bad. Imagine the profound shift in texture against your skin. Beneath you, the rough, prickly embrace of the straw has been replaced by a mattress of the finest down, encased in silk that feels like a thin, smooth sheet of river ice against your limb. This is the private chamber of a young Anne Boleyn, long before the golden weight of the crown, long before the shadow of the tower. Even here in one of the grandest and most secure homes in England, the great frost is an uninvited and persistent guest. The stone walls, 3 feet thick and sweating with a ghostly damp, do not hold the heat like the humble, sun-baked mud of the longhouse. Instead, they act as a massive, vertical icebox, pulling the very warmth out of the room and radiating a deep, bone-making chill that no heavy tapestry can ever fully mask. In the 1520s, a future queen's room was often as freezing as a beggar's hut, and her fine silk was no warmer than a shepherd's rough wool. As you lie in this grand, hollow, and regal silence, let your mind drift back to Anne's formative years in the French court. The prestigious school of elegance where she learned that grace is a shield. In your mind's eye, hear the distinct, sophisticated, and crisp rustle of heavy silk in midnight velvet moving through a frozen stone gallery. It is a sharp, delicate sound, like the breaking of thin, translucent ice on a garden pond. In France, she lived among the glittering, frozen corridors of the Loire Valley, learning to navigate a world where the air was always cold, but the gazes were always burning with intent. This is the specific melancholy of the high-born winter, the utter isolation of the individual. There is no human lasagna here to share the warmth. There is only the solitary figure in the grand four-poster bed, surrounded by heavy velvet curtains that act as a velvet cage, trying to trap a few precious, fading gasps of warm air within the darkness. Listen now to the specific, repetitive soundscape of this noble chamber. It is not the lowing of oxen, or the rhythmic crunch of a cow's cud. It is the delicate, rhythmic, and deeply hypnotic scritch, scritch, scritch of a feathered quill, scratching across dry, expensive parchment. In the deep dark of the castle, by the flickering amber light of a single sputtering tallow candle, Anne is writing. The sound is tiny, sharp, and intensely focused, a needle of human intent, piercing through the heavy, silent fabric of the night. It is a soothing, repetitive sound that speaks of whispered secrets, of long letters to kings, and of a brilliant mind that never truly sleeps. The rhythmic scratching of the quill is the only heartbeat this room has. It is the sound of a woman carefully carving her own destiny out of the frozen, indifferent silence of history. Feel the strange, chilly elegance of this solitude. There is a quiet, haunting peace in the grandeur. The shadows on the gray stone walls do not dance with the chaotic, orange energy of the peasant's hearth. They move with a slow, stately, and measured grace, cast by the dying embers of a distant fire that is too far away from the bed to ever be truly felt. The air you breathe is thin, regal, and still, as you follow the mesmerizing sound of the quill. Let your own thoughts become as sharp and as elegant as Anne's flowing script. You are no longer sinking into the warm earth. You are floating in a vast chamber of history, wrapped in the melancholy beauty of a winter that was never quite warm enough, no matter how much gold was piled upon the heavy covers. Even the finest, most luxurious furs, the ermine, the sable, and the fox carry the permanent chill of the castle stone within their fibers. Anne pulls the heavy velvet-lined covers up to her chin, her dark, observant eyes reflecting the last dying glimmer of the candle. She understands a cold truth that the peasants huddling in the valley do not, that the higher you climb toward the sun of power, the colder and sharper the wind begins to blow. Her ambition is not a soft or comforting thing. It is a hard, brilliant, and lonely diamond. But in this specific moment, in the deep, silent heart of the night at Hever, she is simply a girl in a freezing room, listening to the winter wind howl and mourn around the high battering. The scratching of the pen finally stops. The candle is pinched out by a slender hand, leaving a single spiraling thread of acrid smoke, to dance and vanish in the pale moonlight. The transition from the communal, earthy warmth of the village to this solitary, stone-cold elegance has shifted the very gears of your journey. You are moving now from the simple survival of the body to the complex survival of the spirit. The silence of the castle is heavier, more profound than the silence of the hut, but it is a silence filled with the hidden electricity of the future. You are drifting now in the powerful slipstream of a woman who would change the world forever, feeling the cold, expensive silk settle over your limbs like a heavy shroud of history. The heat of the pottage in your belly is now a distant, faded memory. Here, in the holes of the Boleyns, the only true warmth is the fire of the restless mind. Your breathing has slowed to match the stately, slow-motion pace of the castle's long shadow. You are suspended in the in-between of history, caught forever between the mud and the gold. The frost on the high window pane is etching intricate patterns of crowns and thorns, but you are safe and still within the heavy velvet curtains of the bed. You are falling into a deeper, more sophisticated and more reflective, sleepless sleep of statecraft, of starlight, and of secret. For while the peasants in the valley slept merely to survive the dawn, Anne Boleyn slept to conquer it. Her ambition was a fire that burned hotter and longer than any hearth in England. As the heavy velvet curtains of the great bed at Hever Castle draw tight, creating a world within a world, the air within this small, enclosed sanctuary becomes thick and heavy with the scent of high-stakes history and the quiet, melancholic perfume of power. We are no longer in the humble realm of simple physical survival. We have entered the ethereal and dangerous realm of the crown of thorns. States where every indrawn breath is a silent calculation, and every shadow in the corner is a potential weapon. Imagine, if you will, the small portable writing desk resting upon the heavy down coverlet, its dark wood polished to a mirror sheen by years of secret use. This is the same desk that held the king's letters, those desperate ink-stained pleas from Henry VIII that promised a golden throne, but ultimately delivered a legacy of ice and iron. In the flickering, low amber glow of the very last candle, the parchment seems to vibrate with the trapped energy of 1,000 whispered scandals and half-spoken promises. This is the drama of the Tudor court. But here in the sanctuary of the night, it is a drama whispered in the deep dark, stripped of its glittering gold and reduced to the rhythmic, hypnotic pulse of a woman's restless and brilliant heart. The rise to ultimate power was not a sudden burst of summer heat. It was a long, cold, and calculated climb through the shifting, treacherous shadows of the English court. Feel the immense weight of that ambition now, settling over your own limbs like a heavy silken shroud. It is as substantial and as demanding as the ermine-lined robes that Anne would eventually wear, a weight that pulls at the shoulders, tires the spine, and demands a rigid, unwavering, and frozen grace. In your mind's eye, see the long, frozen stone corridors of Whitehall and Hampton Court, where the heavy, intricate tapestries muffle the sound of conspiratorial footsteps, and the air is always thin with the scent of old wood and new fear. The court was a magnificent labyrinth of cold stone and burning gazes, a place where a single misstep on the polished oak floor could lead to a fall, from which there was no possible rising. As you lie perfectly still in your own time, imagine the sheer exhaustion of navigating this world, the constant, low-frequency hum of tension that resided just beneath the music of the lutes and the spinning of the dance. It is a sophisticated royal kind of weariness, a profound fatigue of the soul that makes this bed feel like the only safe harbor in a vast and hungry sea of sharks. There is a tragic, lingering beauty in this climb, a quiet melancholy that hangs over the silk hangings of the bed like a fine, gray mist at dawn. Anne understood, perhaps better than anyone, that the crown she so fiercely sought was not made of simple, warm gold, but of finely woven thorns, each one a sharp, cold reminder of the staggering cost of her ascent. As she lay in the dark, the flickering candles cast long, distorted, and reaching shadows that looked like the skeletal fingers of those she had displaced in her journey to the top. The human lasagna of the warm communal village was now a world away, a memory from a different life. Here the only huddle was one of political alliance. Old, fragile and glass-like thing that could shatter into 1,000 pieces with a single change in the king's mercurial and stormy temper. The velvet curtains of her bed were not just drawn for warmth. They were a heavy final barrier against the prying, hungry eyes of the ladies-in-waiting. A private, dark fortress where she could finally allow the mask of the indomitable queen to slip away, if only for a few hours of fitful, necessary sleep. Listen now to the specific, hollow, and echoing silence of the Tudor night. It is a silence punctuated only by the distant, rhythmic, and heavy footsteps of the yeomen of the guard, patrolling the cold stone galleries far outside the chamber door. The sound is steady, unwavering thump, 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 by a mechanical heartbeat of a castle that reminds you, even in your dreams, that you are a prisoner of your own high rank. This sound is deeply grounding, a repetitive, rhythmic anchor that allows your own heart rate to slow, to settle, and to eventually synchronize with the stone pulse of the palace. You are safe. Within the velvet, you are shielded by the very status that threatens to consume you. The candles are burning very low now, their small flames dancing in a private slow-motion ballet that requires absolutely nothing from you but your quiet, heavy observation. The wax drips with agonizing slowness, forming intricate frozen sculptures of white and gold that mirror the complexity and the fragility of the life Anne has chosen to lead. The great haunting reveal of her story is a cold and sobering one. Her ultimate triumph, the very moment the heavy gold crown was finally placed upon her dark hair, was the beginning of her coldest and most desolate winter. The peak of the mountain is always the place where the air is thinnest, the wind is sharpest, and the frost is most permanent. As queen, the warm huddle of the village was replaced by the terrifying, echoing isolation of the throne. Imagine the physical sensation of that gold circle resting on your forehead. It is not warm. It is a cold, unforgiving and heavy weight that marks you as a permanent target for every bitter wind that blows across the English Channel. Her victory was a fortress of shimmering, ice-beautiful, radiant, and awe-inspiring, but ultimately fragile and cold to the touch. In this moment of deep reflection, the tragedy of her beauty becomes a soothing, heavy balm, a reminder that all the gold and silk in England could not buy the simple, earthy, and profound peace of the mud hut we left behind in the valley. Focus your mind now on the exquisite textures of this royal confinement. Feel the incredible dense and suffocating softness of the velvet curtains as they hang motionless in the dark. They are so thick, so heavy, that they seem to swallow the very sound of the world outside, creating a vacuum of absolute velvety stillness. The air inside the bed tent is warm with the steady rhythm of your own breath, a small, humid, and private microclimate that is yours and yours alone. The subtle scent of lavender-washed linens rises to meet you, a gentle, floral ghost that speaks of a time of innocence, a time before the politics, the letters, and the pain. You are sinking deep into the down mattress, the feathers rising up to cradle your limbs in a way that feels like a slow-motion surrender to gravity. The drama of the court is fading, becoming a distant, unimportant murmur, like the sound of a great river heard from the safety of a high, quiet cliff. You are drifting now in the long, elegant wake of her story, feeling the melancholy elegance of the Tudors settle over you like a heavy, silken shroud of protection. The ambition, the ink-stained letters, the crowns, and the thorns, they are all dissolving now into the silver mists of the night. You are no longer a participant in the struggle for power. You are merely a quiet witness to the profound silence that followed. The flickering candle finally sputters, gasps, and dies, leaving only the pale, cold moonlight to illuminate the heavy embroidery on that hanging. The patterns of silver lions and golden lilies are frozen in time, much like the memory of the woman who once slept beneath them. You are falling into a deep, dignified, and incredibly heavy sleep, a sleep that is earned through the sheer immense weight of history itself. The castle is a silent tomb of secrets tonight, and you are tucked deep and safe within its heart. The great frost of 1347 has been replaced by the political winter of the 1530s, but the result remains the same, a profound, immovable, and absolute stillness. You are safe within the stone, protected by the very history that records your name. The heavy breath of the giants in the longhouse and the silver smoke of the village are now a distant echo, replaced by the solitary, regal, and eternal silence of the Queen's chamber. You are ready to let go, to slip past the thorns and into the dark, restorative and silent waters of the path. For as the heavy iron gates of the tower finally close with a distant, echoing thud, the story of the flesh ends, and the story turns to cold, enduring stone. As the heavy echoing thud of the iron gates finally fades into the damp, gray morning air, the grand velvet curtains of the palace seem to dissolve into a much colder, much older, and much more enduring reality. We are no longer in the temporary luxury of Hever Castle or the frantic, burning intrigues of Hampton Court. We have arrived at last at the tower's silence, the final, quietest, and most peaceful chapter of this long winter journey through time. Imagine the thick, low morning mist rising slowly off the black waters of the Thames, a heavy gray and merciful shroud that clings to the ancient salt-stained stones of the White Tower. This is not the biting, aggressive frost of the open field, nor is it the sharp, ambitious cold of the court. It is a soft, heavy, and forgiving cold that blankets the entire world in a state of absolute, dignified, and unwavering stillness. The air here is perfectly motionless, as if the great river itself has stopped its ancient flow just to witness the quiet, internal gravity of this final moment. Within these massive, silent stone walls, there is no more room for the restless fire of ambition or the frantic scratching of the midnight quill. All the complex calculations have been made, all the dangerous letters have been sent, and all the whispers have finally been silent. There is only the final prayer, not a plea for mercy, but a slow, rhythmic, and peaceful internal dialogue with the infinite. Imagine the physical sensation of those last steady steps across the cold, damp straw scattered upon the private scaffold. They are not steps taken in fear, but steps of a profound, heavy, and undeniable dignity. Each footfall is slow, deliberate, and entirely certain. The soft rustle of Anne's dark damask gown is the only sound in the courtyard. A dry, gentle whisper that tells the story of a woman who has finally found a peace that the heavy gold of a crown could never ever provide. The tension that has lived in the back of your own neck for the last hour of this journey is now finally, completely letting go. You are walking with her into the absolute stillness of history. There is a tragic, breathtaking beauty in this total acceptance of the dark. The warm human lasagna of the medieval village and the cold golden cage of the Tudor court have both fallen away into the mist, leaving only the essential, indestructible core of the spirit. As you lie perfectly still in your own bed, feel the ultimate stillness of this scene settling over your limbs like a heavy, invisible blanket. Your breathing is now as quiet and as rhythmic as the mist moving upon the river. Your heart is a slow, steady, muffled drumbeat, marking a time that is no longer measured by the winds of kings or the turning of calendars. The grand reveal of this story is not one of an ending, but of a quiet, enduring, and magnificent transformation. Her legacy did not die on that cold, grey morning. It lived on, vibrating through the very stones of England, through the salt of the sea, and eventually through the red-haired daughter who would one day watch the same eternal stars from the throne of her own making. The winter of Anne Boleyn was merely the necessary fallow season before the arrival of a brilliant Elizabethan spring. Listen now to the absolute haunting and beautiful quiet of a heavy snowfall over the Tower of London. It is a sound that isn't truly a sound at all. It is the soft, weightless, and hypnotic descent of millions upon millions of white flakes, each one a tiny, cold, and crystalline blessing landing silently upon the ancient grey stone and the dark, indifferent water. The snow is swallowing the world whole. It muffles the distant, unimportant sounds of the waking city. It hides the jagged scars of the stone, and it turns the grim fortress into a soft palace of pure white silence. In this atmosphere, there is no more drama, no more artificial heat, no more struggle for air. There is only the long, slow, and inevitable surrender to the white dark. You are sinking deep into the snowfall, becoming as light, as still, and as peaceful as the flakes themselves as they settle upon the earth. The stories of the mud hut, the longhouse, castle, and court are all beginning to blur and soften the edges, merging into a single unified frequency of total rest. The lowing of the heavy ox in the corner of the longhouse, the rhythmic scratching of the quill in the dead of night, and the steady, metallic footsteps of the palace guard have all dissolved into this ultimate tower silence. You are perfectly insulated by the thick, heavy layers of history, wrapped in a comfortable shroud of snow, time, and memory. The great frost of 1347 and the political winter of the 1530s have both reached their final, quiet conclusion. The world is now a vast, white, and peaceful void, and you are drifting effortlessly at its very center. Feel the final, heavy surrender of every muscle in your body. Your jaw is loose and relaxed, your eyes are heavy and perfectly still behind your lids, and your hands are resting upon the sheets like forgotten, sun-warmed stone. You have survived the long journey through the cold. You have traveled safely through the straw, the wool, the pottage, the silk, and the stone. And you have finally arrived at the place where all stories end and all dreams begin. There is nothing left for you to do, nothing left for you to plan, and absolutely nothing left for you to fear. The cycle of the winter is complete. The earth is deep in sleep. The cattle are dreaming in their stalls, and the queen is at rest in her stone chamber. You are floating in the great restorative and silent dark, carried by the slow tide of a history that has finally, mercifully, found its peak. The embers in the distant hearth have finally turned to soft, gray, and weightless ash, and the internal fire of the warm pottage has settled into a gentle, fading glow within your core. The village, the castle, and the tower are all one now quiet, silver monuments to the human spirit's incredible ability to find warmth and meaning in the coldest of times. You are falling into the deepest, most absolute well of sleep, a sleep that spans across centuries and across worlds. The snow continues to fall outside the window of your mind, covering the tracks of the past and the hidden paths to the future. The stories fade into the mist, the embers are nothing but ash, and the world is perfectly, beautifully still. You are home, you are safe, you are silent. The watch is finally over. The fires are banked, and the night is entirely yours. Leave now, for the winter has passed, and you are held in the arms of time. The long frozen journey through the centuries has finally reached its ultimate, most silent destination. Every layer of heavy history, every scratch of warm wool, every drop of rich pottage, and every ancient, heated stone has led you exactly here, to the absolute threshold of the dark. The great sprawling landscape of the winter of 1347, with its humble mud walls, its communal fires, and its lonely royal towers, is contracting now. It is drawing inward with the slow, steady rhythm of a fading heartbeat, until it fits perfectly and safely within the quiet space of your own darkened room. The transition is now complete. The past is no longer a distant place you are merely visiting. It has become a living warmth you are wearing. Sleep, let the word itself settle over your mind like the heavy silver-gray ash of a long banked fire. It is a slow, rhythmic, and ancient command rising from the very depth of the earth. Sleep, the boundaries between the peasant's protective straw and your own soft mattress are dissolving entirely, becoming a single, unified, and safe foundation for your spirit. The air you breathe is no longer the freezing mist of the Thames or the woodsmoke of the medieval longhouse. It is the quiet, filtered, and familiar air of your own sanctuary, a sanctuary, protected by the invisible presence of the millions of survivors who walk these cold paths before you. You have navigated the great frost with courage. You have outlasted the political winters of kings and queens. You have carried the friendly brick of internal warmth within you through the deepest, most silent part of the midnight hour. The great and final reveal of this long journey is now yours to keep forever. The winter was never something to be feared, but a season of the soul. You have survived the cold not by fighting its bite, but by embracing the huddle, the breath, and the stone. The spring you were searching for is not a distant date on a calendar. It is the internal fire you have stoked so carefully tonight. You are now the master and the guardian of your own warmth. And that warmth is absolute. It is untouchable. It is eternal. The stories are fading now, drifting away into the soft white noise of the eternal room. The flickering candles of history have all been pinched out by a gentle hand, leaving only the soft, heavy, and velvet dark. The footsteps of the guard have stopped their patrol. The cattle are still and silent in their stalls. The village is hushed beneath the snow. There is nothing left for you to hear but the sound of the world breathing in its sleep, distant and hypnotic whistle of the winter wind outside the glass, and the steady, comforting, and rhythmic crackle of a fire that will never truly go out. You are drifting now, drifting far past the reach of language, past the reach of memory, and into the profound waters of the subconscious. You are safe. You are home. You are exactly where you were always meant to be at the end of the day. And when the sun finally finds its slow way back to the world of the living, you will be ready to meet it. But for now, the long watch is over, the fires are banked, and the doors are barred against the frost. If you find yourself waking in the quiet nights to come, simply remember the huddle. The stone is always waiting for you at the foot of the bed. The fire is always banked, glowing beneath the ash. We will be here in the shadows of time to guide you back through the straw and the silk whenever the world grows too cold or the night grows too long. But for now, there is only the dark and the peace it brings. Sleep, sleep, good night.